Imagine waking up each morning with a knot in your stomach, already anticipating the endless loop of requests, invitations, and subtle demands that will greet you before your coffee even brews. You find yourself scrolling through your phone, not out of curiosity but out of fear, fear of missing a message, fear of letting someone down, fear of being forgotten. Each notification feels like a tiny heartbeat of approval, a brief surge of relief that you are still wanted, still included, still loved. You answer every text, promise to join every gathering, volunteer for every project, even when your calendar is already bursting at the seams. You smile through conversations you'd rather skip, nod politely at ideas you find hollow, laugh at jokes that land flat, offer compliments that feel forced. All because you've learned that peace comes not from authenticity but from harmony, not from boundaries but from compliance. And harmony, you've concluded, is guaranteed only when you become a master pleaser. The paradox is dizzying. The more you stretch yourself to accommodate others, the less control you actually have over your own life. The more you bend to fit every expectation, the more you fracture your true self, losing track of your own voice, your priorities, your desires. It's like building a house of sand. You shape it carefully, brick by brick, only to watch the tide sweep it all away the moment someone else's need crashes ashore. Have you ever paused, halfway through another yes, and felt a hollow echo where your confidence used to live? That echo is the sign of something far deeper than fatigue or overcommitment. It's the whisper of your sovereignty slipping through the cracks of your people-pleasing. The craving for external validation is universal. From childhood we learn that smiles and pats on the back equal safety, that frowns and criticism invite isolation. We carry this conditioning into every aspect of life, classrooms, boardrooms, friendships, romances, unaware that each acquiescent gesture is chipping away at our authenticity. It becomes easy to confuse kindness with self-erasure and generosity with self-sacrifice. But there is a subtle tyranny underpinning this drive to please, a tyranny so insidious that we unwittingly adopt it as our own internal governor. It whispers that our value is measured by the comfort we provide others, by the absence of friction, by our ability to shrink ourselves until we become invisible. And in that invisibility, we become powerless. What if I told you that every yes you utter in fear is a vote against your own sovereignty? That every time you numb your needs to serve the noise of external expectations, you trade your seat at the table for a footnote in someone else's story? The cost is high, a persistent ache of dissatisfaction, a gnawing sense that you're living a life designed by everyone but you. When the applause fades, and it always does, what's left? A shell of routines, relationships, and roles that you fulfilled but never truly inhabited. You wake one day, looking in the mirror at someone whose smile no longer reaches the eyes, wondering, when did I become so small? When did self-respect take flight, leaving only the husk of approval craving, fluttering empty-winged in my chest? This isn't just poetic angst. It's a pattern that corrodes mental health, creativity, and genuine connection. When your actions hinge on the unpredictability of other people's feelings, you forfeit the freedom to act with intention. You become reactive, chasing reactions, building strategies to avoid conflict rather than strategies to achieve purpose. Your identity dissolves into a series of context-dependent performances, pleasing the professor, pleasing the boss, pleasing the partner. Each act of compliance piling atop the last until you can no longer remember the shape of your true self beneath the scaffolding of appeasement. Now, imagine something radically different, a secret playbook from one of history's greatest strategists, Niccolò Machiavelli, who observed power in its rawest form and distilled its most enduring lessons. A playbook that doesn't sugarcoat the mechanics of influence or pander to the sentimentality of being liked. Instead, It offers a cool, unflinching analysis of how the strong gain and hold sway over the weak, not through endless agreeability, but through calculated presence, measured generosity, and the assertive refusal to be dominated by the whims of others. Picture the transformation, from a compliant subject slinking in the shadows to a sovereign agent standing in the center of your own story. From reacting to others' agendas to setting the agenda yourself. From begging for applause to commanding respect. This isn't about becoming a tyrant. It's about recognizing that unchecked people-pleasing is its own form of tyranny, perhaps the most insidious, because it lodges itself inside our mind and heart, wearing the mask of being good. Machiavelli's razor-sharp insights will show you that authenticity doesn't mean being liked by everyone. It means being true to yourself, even if it costs you a round of applause. With each principle you uncover, you'll see that power isn't an external prize to be won through compliance. It's an internal stance you adopt through discipline, clarity, and the willingness to embrace the discomfort of standing apart. Think for a moment. Have you ever felt the hollow aftermath of praise, like a sugar rush followed by a crash, leaving you more empty than before? That emptiness isn't because applause is meaningless, it's because applause, when earned at the price of self-betrayal, is just another chain. Machiavelli's first hidden principle will teach you how to break those chains, to redirect your energy from the ceaseless pursuit of approval toward the quieter, sturdier satisfaction of self-command. You'll learn why strength, not popularity, breeds sustainable influence, and why the cold calculations of power can sit comfortably alongside the warmth of ethical purpose. By the end of this journey, you'll no longer be a hostage to every nod or shake of the head. You'll understand how the most formidable figures in history, leaders, thinkers, visionaries, gained their footing not by bending until they broke but by bending only as far as strategy required, then standing firm for what truly mattered. You'll discover how to reclaim your time, your voice, and your vision, realigning them with your deepest aspirations instead of the fleeting whims of the crowd. And you'll be invited to ask yourself, in the stillness before you take your next step, will I continue to shrink myself for a fleeting flicker of approval, or will I stand tall, guided by principles that demand respect rather than applause? Perhaps you'll recognize a restlessness inside you that you've long dismissed as mere stress or simple indecision. Perhaps you've felt that undercurrent of dissatisfaction, the sense that something vital is missing, even when life looks picture perfect on the outside. That restlessness is your inner sovereign stirring, reminding you that you were never meant to roam in someone else's pasture, that your true terrain awaits. The playbook we're about to explore is less a recipe for domination over others and more a guide to self-domination, mastering your impulses, your fears, and your need for external affirmation so that you can craft a life of intentional power and unshakable self-respect. So let me ask you, have you ever felt hollow after earning praise? Have you ever watched yourself contort and compromise, then wondered if you've become a stranger in your own story? Today marks the moment to step off that treadmill of approval. Today you'll be invited to confront the paradox at the heart of people-pleasing, that the more you strive to be liked, the less you are truly seen. And you'll begin to glimpse how the most enduring form of respect isn't granted through continual appeasement but through the quiet, unwavering authority of an individual who knows their value and isn't afraid to stand by it. Soon, very soon, we'll unveil the first principle drawn from Machiavelli's stark, brilliant analyses, a principle that seems counterintuitive at first glance but, once applied, shatters the very foundations of the approval trap. It will show you how to pivot from being everyone's agreeable errand runner to being the person whose word carries weight, whose presence commands consideration. And you'll realize that true strength isn't antithetical to integrity, it's the vessel through which integrity finds its fullest expression. Hold on to that question, Have you ever felt hollow after earning praise? Let it echo in the corridors of your mind. It's the first crack in the wall of your people-pleasing prison. And just beyond that crack lies a revelation that will begin to reshape not only how you relate to others, but how you relate to yourself. The game is about to change, and the rules are about to be rewritten in your favor. Let's turn the page and discover the first hidden principle that Machiavelli used to understand, and ultimately to master, the true dynamics of power and human nature. Quirito a spectador. Confire se você ainda está inscrito no canal. Às vezes, a inscrição pode ser cancelada automaticamente, então é sempre bom verificar. Aproveite e se torna membro do canal. Como membro, você terá benefícios incríveis, como assistir aos nossos conteúdos semanais. Além disso, você pode apoiar nosso trabalho sendo financiador do canal com value. Sua ajuda-nos permite investir em ferramentas melhores e elevar a qualidade de produção dos nossos conteúdos. Junte-se a nós nessa jornada e faça parte de nossa comunidade. E compartilhe gente ai nos comentários de que cidade você está escutando esta história e que horrors são por aí agora. Part 1, Chains of Affection. The psychology of pleasing. Imagine waking up before dawn, heart already pounding with the weight of unwritten to-do lists and unsent messages, convinced that the only way to secure tomorrow's peace is by saying yes to every request today. You're the person who gladly picks up the extra shift, who volunteers to lead the group project, who agrees to host your friend's party, always convinced that accommodation is the currency of connection. But as your phone pings a new demand, you catch a flash of dread, another obligation that didn't exist on yesterday's calendar. You smile at the incoming request, nod at the burden disguised as an opportunity, and haul yourself into action, even though every fiber of your being craves release. Why do we do this? Why do we bind ourselves in golden chains of affection? From the moment we first learned to beam at a parent's approving gaze, we were schooled in the currency of praise. A well-timed good job lit up our world like sunshine after rain. A frown or a sigh felt like ice forming around our chest. At school, our sense of self became tethered to teacher stickers and peer applause. Our earliest wiring was fastened to the idea that staying in the smile zone meant safety, acceptance, belonging. We never asked whether that approval came at the expense of our true yearnings or whether those vines of affirmation would one day choke our capacity to stand tall on our own roots. Consider Sarah, a kind soul in a marketing department who secretly dreams of writing poetry. Week after week, she postpones her creative work to cover for absent colleagues, answer client emails on weekends, and jump at every last-minute brainstorming session. Deep down, she knows this pattern is eroding her spark. Yet when her manager says, "Could you handle this extra campaign launch?" her reflex is an automatic absolutely. That impulse isn't generosity, it's survival. She's learned, often through subtle reprimands and side glances, that declining equals danger, missing the team email thread, risking judgment, maybe even exclusion. It's a trap disguised as camaraderie. Inside Sarah's mind, an incessant dialogue churns. I must prove my worth. I can't let them down. They count on me. These thoughts form an inner governor, ratcheting up pressure each time she considers dissent. It whispers that any hint of resistance will topple her carefully constructed identity as the dependable one, the anchor holding the ship steady. She doesn't realize that this constant yes is forging shackles, links of expectation that grow heavier with every acquiescence. The same voice that once promised safety now demands unceasing compliance. What price does she pay? The glow of a completed task fades into exhaustion. Creative ideas are postponed indefinitely, buried under the rubble of others' priorities. A subtle anger blooms, resentment toward colleagues, self-loathing for failing her own dreams. Nights are restless, because the mind still churns through tomorrow's chore list. Weekends feel hollow, because her calendar is an echo chamber of external demands. And through it all, she wonders, is this what being a good friend, a good employee, a good person truly means? Or is it simply the tyranny of others' agendas masquerading as virtue? Psychologists call this pattern operant conditioning, behaviors reinforced by rewards, approval, praise, avoidance of conflict, become automatic. Each burst of positive feedback from a boss or peer tethers us more tightly to the role of pleaser. Neuroscientists add another layer. Mirror neurons amplify our drive to sync with others' emotions, making discomfort and displeasure nearly visceral. Dopamine floods our system when we see that thumbs up emoji or hear thank you, reinforcing the behavior like Pavlov's bell. Over time, we forget who set that bell ringing in the first place. On the social stage, the rules are clear. Reciprocity demands that favors be returned. Ingratiation licenses subtle manipulation. We flatter to gain trust, then fulfill expectations to secure favor. But between these strategic dances lies a deeper hunger, the fear of isolation. Attachment theory shows that human beings wired for connection will often sacrifice authenticity just to stay within the circle. We confuse communion with self-erasure and goodwill with self-annihilation. We become frightened that no is a door to loneliness, that silence is a void filled by suspicion. Here lies our existential dilemma. Must we choose between belonging and authenticity? Do we really have to wear a mask to sit at the table? If we strip away the act of pleasing, will the bonds we value unravel? This question haunts every yes we utter from obligation rather than desire. It's the same question that echoes in lonely moments when our inbox is quiet and we crave that familiar tug of social demand, because even empty demands feel more reassuring than absolute silence. The first step toward liberation is recognizing the internal cost of every yes. Recall a moment when you caught yourself agreeing against your own interests, maybe lending money you couldn't spare, or staying late even when your family needed you. In that instant, you may have felt a hollow thud inside, as if a piece of your own agency was clipped. That twinge is a signal, an early warning beacon flashing red. You're sacrificing yourself for a payoff that's always fleeting. Our brains are remarkably adept at forming habit loops: cue, routine, reward. The ping of a message triggers the routine of a quick sure, which delivers the reward of approval and relief from anxiety. Over time, these loops carve neural pathways so deep that they demand to be followed reflexively. But here's the liberating twist. Neuroplasticity means those grooves can be overwritten. By introducing a pause between cue and response, you can reroute the loop toward healthier outcomes. Imagine yourself as a marionette, strings tied to every request, tugged this way and that. The puppet might dance beautifully, but the dance isn't its own. It moves only by surrendering its form to external will. The more strings that bind you, the less expressive space you have to breathe, to improvise, to create. And yet you've been taught that dancing on command is the highest virtue. What if the true artistry lies in selectively cutting some of those strings, and reclaiming the space to choose your own steps? Here is the paradox of people-pleasing. The more you conform, the more constrained you become. Each extra obligation narrows your freedom until you find yourself trapped in a glass chamber of expectations, peering out at a landscape you once roamed freely. That space, once your realm of possibility, now feels distant and cold. Every yes becomes another slab of glass sealing you in. And still, you tap lightly on the surface, hoping someone will applaud and crack it open. Take a moment now. What interactions in your life feel most inauthentic? Think of conversations where you smiled while your heart ached, favors you granted that cost you more than you gained, or commitments you kept purely out of fear. Write them down in your mind or on a scrap of paper. Let yourself feel the discomfort, because that discomfort is the key to transformation. It illuminates precisely where the chains of affection have dug into your spirit. Healthy cooperation springs from mutual respect and genuine desire to contribute. Chronic people-pleasing springs from fear and an unspoken contract. I will erode myself so you won't reject me. The line between the two can be subtle, but it's profound. One approach nourishes reciprocity and authentic bonds. The other creates an unending ledger of obligation and creeping resentment. Distinguishing these forces is like learning to separate water from oil. They may swirl together, but they never truly merge. Small shifts can start to break the habit. The next time you feel the urge to say yes before thinking, pause and take a breath. Turn your gaze inward for a moment and ask, what do I truly want here? What's the cost of agreeing? You don't owe an immediate explanation. Sometimes a simple "let me get back to you" is enough to create the space for clarity. In that pause lies a crack in the wall of conditioned compliance. Recognizing the pattern is the doorway. Behind it stands a strategy so counterintuitive that it feels almost rebellious. To reclaim power, you must learn to disappoint. Yes, disappointment. But not as a weapon or an act of cruelty, rather as a deliberate tool to reset expectations, to teach others that your time, your energy, and your values are not endlessly negotiable. When you disappoint in service of self-respect, you sow seeds of honest respect in return. Soon, we will turn to Machiavelli's first radical tactic for shattering these golden chains. It isn't a brash decree or a spectacle of dominance. Instead, it's a subtle recalibration of presence, an artful withdrawal that forces others to reappraise your value. This tactic will upend everything you thought you knew about pleasing and power. It will reveal why, by learning to disappoint with purpose, you can step into a realm of influence far deeper than any applause can ever take you. Part 2, Machiavelli's Mirror. Power beyond approval. Imagine standing at the edge of a high cliff, the wind buffeting your face with the roar of unseen currents, and realizing that the applause you've chased all your life is nothing more than a faint echo carried off by the breeze. Modern self-help culture preaches that popularity equals success, that to be admired is to be secure, that to be loved is to be powerful. Yet Machiavelli's mirror reflects a different truth. Genuine influence often hides behind a facade of indifference. He observed princes who refused to pander to the whims of courtiers, rulers who would rather cast a cold glance than feign warmth. In that refusal, they discovered a deeper authority, one born not from the fickle heartstrings of approval but from the unyielding backbone of self-possession. What if your greatest strength lay in that very detachment, and your willingness to stand apart even when every instinct screams to fit in? In The Prince, Machiavelli dismantles the myth of benevolent leadership. He doesn't advocate cruelty for cruelty's sake, nor does he demand heartlessness as a default. Instead, he identifies fear as a more reliable ally than love. Love can bloom and wither. Fear, once planted, roots itself deeper, guided by the primal urge to avoid pain. When subjects, or colleagues, friends, partners, understand that your goodwill is earned, not freely given, they regard you differently. They move with caution in your presence, and that caution becomes respect. Machiavelli's calculus is cold but precise. If you cannot inspire fear without becoming hated, balance both. If you can be both respected and liked, all the better. But never sacrifice the former for the latter. Consider Cesare Borgia, the young scion who roamed the Papal States in the early 1500s. Driven by ambition and armed with his father's blessing, he chose calculated displays of force over empty gestures of camaraderie. After seizing a rebellious city, he didn't parade through smiling and waving. He invited the conspirators to a banquet and executed them at the table. The shock rippled across the region, and fear spread faster than any rumor. In that moment, Borgia's reputation crystallized. He was a man whose hospitality carried a deadly price. Sympathy would have been forgotten by sunrise. Terror ensured his name endured. This brutal example reveals the paradox Machiavelli cherished: strength clothed in strategic kindness outlasts kindness alone. And yet this path poses an existential dilemma. Can you wield strategic ruthlessness without losing your humanity? Must you abandon warmth to command respect? Many recoil at the thought of a rigid heart, fearing that a single act of calculated discipline will transform them into a tyrant. But Machiavelli's insight cuts deeper. Detachment is not the absence of empathy, it's the mastery of its timing. The skill lies in choosing when to reveal softness and when to reinforce boundaries. True power emanates from the individual who knows precisely which emotion to display and when to withdraw it. Benevolence becomes a tool rather than a default setting. Ruthlessness becomes a last resort rather than a reflex. Picture a modern executive who once led every meeting with maternal enthusiasm, praising endlessly, refusing to raise a critical word, desperate to be seen as approachable. Over time, her team began to take liberties, deadlines slipped, subpar work proliferated, and the safety of her approval became a shield behind which mediocrity thrived. Then she adopted Machiavelli's mirror. In the next gathering, she listened quietly, asked incisive questions, and with a calm voice pointed out gaps without a hint of apology. The room went still. No one dared to murmur, because the air itself seemed charged with expectation. Colleagues who once lounged in complacency straightened their posture and delivered results with newfound urgency. She had not become unkind, she had simply ceased to guarantee her approval as a given. That shift in posture is the heart of transformation. When you sever the automatic link between pleasing and acceptance, you reclaim emotional sovereignty. You no longer chase every nod or laugh. Instead, you choose where to invest your endorsement. That choice reverberates far louder than any forced smile. Machiavelli teaches that unpredictability is a silent weapon. Let people predict your kindness, and they'll exploit it. Surprise them with it, and they'll treasure it. Distance breeds curiosity, and curiosity begets engagement. In mastering this balance, you evolve from an emotional hostage, dangling from the ropes of other people's expectations, to a calculated actor controlling the stage. This metamorphosis begins with a simple but shocking act: the willingness to disappoint. In a world that demands constant affirmation, a momentary withdrawal of favor shatters the illusion of guaranteed approval. You communicate without words: I decide when my goodwill is earned. That declaration, felt more than heard, resets the power dynamic. It challenges others to step up, to prove themselves worthy of your time, your energy, your goodwill. And in doing so, they elevate their performance, forging a more genuine connection grounded in mutual respect. Machiavelli's cold mirror reveals that disappointment can be the prelude to deeper allegiance. So here lies the question that demands your answer: what would you risk to be feared more than loved? Would you let a critical request go unacknowledged until it earns your attention? Would you withhold praise until you witness true merit? Would you allow silence to linger where you once filled the space with reassurance? These actions feel counterintuitive, they cut against the grain of our social conditioning, but they are precisely the maneuvers that carve out internal authority. The discomfort you experience in those moments isn't cruelty, it's the pulse of power reclaiming its domain. Soon, you'll uncover Machiavelli's first principle in action, a subtle but seismic tactic that shatters the reflex to please and casts your presence in a new, commanding light. This principle doesn't rely on public spectacle or grandstanding. It thrives in the understated pivot, the quiet refusal, the measured absence. It will teach you how to recalibrate every interaction so that you stand on equal ground, not by demanding acknowledgement, but by embodying values so inherent that ratification becomes a privilege reserved for those who meet your standards. The result is not tyranny, it's a recalibration of respect. As you ponder the weight of fear versus love, consider the longer game. Popularity may fill you with warmth in the moment, but it's as fleeting as applause at a concert. Fear, tempered by fairness, lodges in the mind and compels consistency. A leader who embraces this balance enjoys a steadier influence, less swayed by the tides of opinion. The mirror Machiavelli holds up is unflinching, reminding you that power untethered from principle becomes abuse, but power rooted in principle endures. You'll soon learn how to harness that mirror, how to reflect authority not through aggression, but through strategic restraint. Hold that reflection in your awareness. The more you detach from the pursuit of being liked, the more you cultivate genuine influence. And when you finally meet Machiavelli's first principle, you'll see why stepping away from the spotlight of affirmation can be the most magnetic move of all. The game of power is about to shift beneath your feet, and the rules you once followed will give way to strategies that command respect without sacrificing integrity. Prepare to look deeper into the mirror, for the next revelation will change how you wield every word and gesture from this moment forward. Part 3, From Servility to Sovereignty, Rewriting Your Social Script. Imagine yourself at a dinner party, glass in hand, laughter swirling around you like motes of light, and yet you feel constricted, as though every word you're about to speak has already been rehearsed to avoid any ripple of disapproval. You posture, calibrate your tone, and deliver a story you think everyone will enjoy, while the real story, the one pulsing in your chest, stays locked behind a velvet curtain. That's the essence of servility, performing on cue for an audience you desperately hope won't turn away. But what if you could rewrite the script, cancel the audition, and step onto your own stage with confidence? What if saying what you truly believe became your default setting, not an act of rebellion? Every time you override your instincts to please, a subtle realignment begins inside your nervous system. Neurobehavioral scientists call it the habit loop: cue, routine, reward. The cue might be a raised eyebrow or a lingering silence after a question. The routine, your automatic yes, sure, I'd love to, uttered without a beat of reflection. The reward, a brief rush of relief, a flicker of acceptance. But that reward is like a sugar hit, fleeting and ultimately unsatisfying. Meanwhile, your brain files away the loop as a survival tactic, reinforcing the same pathways until they become neural highways, guiding your tongue and your posture with near-automatic precision. To transform, you must disrupt this highway, rerouting impulses towards self-authority rather than acquiescence. Let's break down the interrupt. The next time you catch yourself on autopilot, heart thudding at the prospect of disappointing someone, insert a brief pause. Not long enough to feel awkward, just enough to breathe. Notice the cue, maybe a glance that feels like judgment, a direct request clashing with your agenda, or even an inner nudge telling you to soft-sell your true opinion. Breathe, and ask internally, what would sovereignty do here? What outcome do I actually want? In that microsecond of reflection, you insert choice into an equation that had been running on old programming. That's the first crack in the wall of conditioned civility. Consider the everyday triggers that trip you into default pleasing mode: a manager's email marked urgent, a friend's text asking for help on the weekend, a partner's offhand comment about what they hope you'll do. You've been trained to interpret every invitation as mandatory, every plea as a moral mandate. But if you step back, you'll see the pattern. These are not crises that demand your soul's surrender, they're opportunities to practice self-authority. You can decide, today I will protect my creative hours, or I will honor my rest. That decision, once made, is your personal declaration that you won't be drafted into every minor skirmish of other people's agendas. Take a moment to visualize a colleague requesting last-minute revisions 5 minutes before a deadline. Your old self would nod and scramble, heart sinking, mind racing. The new you takes a breath, looks at the clock, and says, "I'd like to help, but I'm committed to finishing my own deliverable right now. I can assist afternoon, or we can explore another arrangement." That simple act of boundary setting feels radical, like planting a flag on your time. It doesn't require justification or groveling, it requires clarity and calm. You've just performed a sovereign gesture. You honored your limits and invited collaboration on your terms. That's the shift from reactive to proactive engagement. It isn't built on guilt or fear of rejection. It's built on respect for your own ecosystem of priorities. Over time, people around you recalibrate their expectations. They learn that your yes is earned, not assumed. They begin to value your consent more highly because it comes from genuine willingness rather than compulsion. And in that recalibration, relationships mature, colleagues become more accountable, friends more considerate, and partners more aligned with your rhythms. Of course, saying no can trigger discomfort. A pang of anxiety, a flicker of guilt. That's natural, your brain is resisting the change. But each time you feel that discomfort and stay the course, you rewrite the script of your social narrative. You collect proof that disappointment isn't the abyss you feared. You discover that most people respond with understanding, or at worst, with momentary surprise. And that surprise often transforms into respect when they realize you're standing by a principle, not issuing a capricious denial. As you accumulate these moments, you forge a new identity, one grounded in self-authority. You become someone who delineates personal boundaries as clearly as property lines on a map. You learn to communicate those boundaries with the same politeness but greater firmness you might use when giving directions to a stranger. Left at the light, straight for 2 miles, concise, helpful, unyielding. In social interactions, your guidance becomes equally reliable. People know where they stand with you, and paradoxically, that clarity frees them to interact with you more authentically. This neurobehavioral rewiring isn't a one-off stunt, it's a daily practice. It lives in the small choices, turning down back-to-back virtual meetings, choosing to work uninterrupted on your passion project, telling a friend you can't discuss something at 2 a.m. because sleep is essential. Each of these choices is a micro-declaration of sovereignty. Each small act trains your brain to crave internal validation, your own well done, rather than external applause. Over weeks, those small trainings accumulate into a stable sense of inner authority that no single request can unsettle. You might wonder, doesn't this risk turning me into a cold, aloof person? Not at all. Sovereignty isn't synonymous with stone-heartedness. It's about allocating your empathy and generosity with intention. You can still give wholeheartedly, but you choose the terms, projects that align with your mission, relationships that reciprocate, causes that ignite your passion. You're not slamming the door on generosity. You're installing a gatekeeper who ensures that your giving sustains you rather than depletes you. Let's illustrate this with Maya, a community organizer who spent years picking up everyone's slack until burnout sidelined her. She started small, declining unstructured drop-in meetings that offered no agenda, setting aside her lunch break for quiet reflection, and assigning colleagues responsibility for routine tasks. Each no came with an alternative. I can't facilitate that session, but I can help you draft the outline. Her team adjusted and appreciated her pivot toward strategic involvement. Maya's energy rebounded, her focus sharpened, and she found space to develop new initiatives that had been buried under minutiae. The very people who once expected her to say yes now sought her out for guidance and leadership. That shift from servility to sovereignty is the core arc of this transformation. You stop being the default helper and become the strategic catalyst. You're no longer subject to the whims of each passing demand. You're the steward of your own agenda. You choose your battles, your alliances, your timing. And in doing so, you discover that true collaboration is a dance of equals, not a series of petitions for your approval. People come to you not because you've been trained to comply, but because they know your engagement is deliberate, valuable, and rare. Now, as you stand on this new terrain of self-authority, you face a final existential question. Do you dare to disappoint people if it means honoring yourself? It's a daring move because it upends the familiar comfort of universal acceptance. But that discomfort is the birthplace of transformation. When you choose your true north over the magnetic pull of popularity, you step into a life shaped by your own compass. The world around you shifts in response. The tides of expectation realign with the contours of your boundaries. Take a moment right now to recall the last time you said no without guilt. Maybe it was postponing a social invitation. Maybe it was declining to join a project that didn't resonate. Feel the residue of relief, the faint thrill of independence. Let that feeling remind you that you already possess the capacity for sovereign choice. The next step is to practice it more often, in more domains of your life, until it becomes second nature. Each act of intentional refusal polishes the gem of self-authority, making it shine brighter in every interaction. This isn't a call to withdraw into stubborn isolation or to treat everyone else as a potential threat. It's a call to engage on your own terms, to treat your energy as a precious resource, and to teach others that respect is earned through clear boundaries. In this way, you rewrite your social script from a passive understudy reciting lines written by others to the author of your own narrative, pen in hand, ready to compose the next chapter with intention and power. Soon, we'll explore Machiavelli's strategic framework for amplifying this newfound sovereignty, a structured set of principles drawn from the prince that will guide you in wielding your authority with precision and ethical purpose. You'll learn how to leverage reputation management, selective generosity, and calculated risks to solidify your presence and influence. Prepare to integrate these tactics into your daily rituals so that your sovereignty not only takes root but flourishes. The next revelation will show you how to transform every no into a strategic beacon that draws the right people, the right opportunities, and the right outcomes toward you. Part 4, Strategic Self-Assertion, Lessons from the Prince. Imagine entering any room, boardroom, cafe, even your own living room, and sensing not only the conversations but the undercurrents of expectation. You could rush in with outstretched hands, eager to please, scrambling to respond to every nod and whispered request. Or you could step in deliberately, letting the room pause, just for a moment, to register your presence. That pause is your invitation to set the tone. Machiavelli calls this the art of strategic self-assertion, a blend of reputation management, selective generosity, and calculated risk. It's less about raw force and more about choreographing influence so artfully that others will follow your lead without realizing they're doing it. Let's begin with reputation. Machiavelli insists a prince must cultivate an image of reliability and purpose, because reputation outlives every gesture. Think of Francesco Sforza in 15th century Milan, a condottiero turned duke who knew that rumors of his discipline and decisiveness were as potent as an actual army. He distributed small rewards, promotions, pensions, public honors, to key captains, creating a network of loyalty. Yet he never overinvested. Every gift was calibrated so that his benefactors remained grateful but dependent, always seeking his favor. You can do the same. Identify 3 actions this week that reinforce your reputation: completing tasks before deadlines, speaking up with well-researched ideas, quietly following through on promises that others have forgotten. Each act, however mundane, sends a ripple. This person is reliable. This person is worth watching. Next comes selective generosity. In The Prince, Machiavelli doesn't scold benevolence. He reframes it as a strategic resource, not an endless faucet. True generosity is like seasoning. Used sparingly, it elevates everything. Overuse leaves a bland, predictable taste. Recall the hospitality of King Henry II of France. He would lavish a favored knight with a magnificent feast, then withdraw his invitation the moment loyalty wavered. That withdrawal, disappointing and disquieting, was the crucible that refined devotion. In your life, choose one relationship where you've been too available. Perhaps a colleague who emails at all hours or a friend who texts incessantly. Offer your support in one well-timed gesture, a thoughtful referral, a concise piece of feedback, then step back. Let them initiate the next exchange. This scarcity makes your assistance feel earned, not expected. Then there's the calculus of risk. Machiavelli admired those who dared to act against prevailing winds when opportunity knocked. He praised the audacity of the Duke of Urbino, Federico de Montefeltro, who took a gamble seizing a contested fortress rather than waiting for royal approval. It was a dangerous move, one that could have ended in ruin, but his success cemented his image as a leader who moved first and asked questions later. In modern terms, you might volunteer to lead a high-visibility project that others shy away from, or propose an unorthodox solution in a meeting where everyone else hedges their bets. The result? You become associated with boldness and innovation. Even if your proposal doesn't sail through intact, the willingness to risk shows you're not content to tread water. But wait, doesn't this strip away our humanity? Isn't it cold to treat generosity like a chess piece? Here's the narrative twist. Empathy and strategic control aren't opposites, they're partners in the dance of influence. Machiavelli never counseled total detachment. He urged princes to appear compassionate, to comfort the grieving, to reward the loyal. The key is timing and intention. You can deeply care about a team member's crisis, attend their meetings, lend a sympathetic ear, while maintaining the boundary that your time and resources aren't infinite. Empathy directed with precision builds trust. Empathy scattered indiscriminately erodes your capacity to help where it truly counts. Consider a modern parallel in the office, a manager who schedules open hours for team concerns but closes the door to drop-in chats outside those times. The manager listens attentively during the allotted period, offers concrete guidance, and then gently steers the conversation back toward productivity. Colleagues feel heard, yet they also learn that support comes with structure. The unpredictability of your availability would breed either resentment or neglect. This approach marries warmth with clear limits. You gain the reputation of being both caring and firm, a powerful combination that Machiavelli would applaud. Now let's talk about language as a tool of authority. Machiavelli noted that words carry weight when they're few and pointed. A prince who drenches his speech in flattery dilutes his message. One who speaks seldom but with conviction commands attention. In your next conversation, try a compact vocabulary. I support your initiative, but I need more data before committing further resources. Avoid filler phrases, "No, I'm just saying," or "if it's okay with you." This crisp clarity shifts the dynamic. Your consent becomes a decision, not a default. Timing, too, is a lever of power. Machiavelli warned against flooding people with requests in quick succession. A prince who presents two demands at once forces his subject to choose which to fulfill and which to ignore. You can replicate this subtle pressure. When seeking a favor or a commitment, bundle your request into a single, prioritized ask. Instead of asking a team member to research market trends and coordinate logistics simultaneously, lead with the one that truly matters and reserve the second for negotiation. This approach maximizes the chances of one clear win, bolstering momentum and reinforcing your reputation for strategic acumen. We can't overlook the power of symbolic gestures. A small act, a handwritten note, a thoughtful gift, or a sincere thank you delivered at an unexpected moment can create disproportionate influence. In his writing, Machiavelli cites princes who would gift a solitary ring to a loyal envoy, instilling a sense of personal bond far stronger than an elaborate banquet. In romantic dynamics, surprise your partner with a short love note before a big presentation. In friendships, send a coffee voucher with a brief text, "Thinking of you, keep going." These gestures remind others that you're not an automaton of calculation but a person who invests in genuine connection. Yet, because they're selective, their impact resonates longer than habitual kindness. Balancing reputation, generosity, and risk leads to a poised authority that feels almost magnetic. You cease being the errand runner, you become the figure whose nod seals decisions. But with this shift comes a final existential question: do you possess the discipline to wield power without succumbing to hubris? Machiavelli's ultimate warning was against the infallibility complex. A ruler who believes himself immune to error sets the stage for a fall. You must integrate self-reflection as a strategic habit, schedule a quarterly review of your own conduct, solicit honest feedback from trusted peers, and recalibrate your tactics when arrogance creeps in. The moment you convince yourself that you need no course correction, you begin to erode the very influence you've built. So, which principle challenges your natural inclinations most? Is it the restraint of generosity? The boldness of calculated risk? The precision of controlled language? The answer reveals your biggest growth edge. Maybe you're generous to a fault, eager to prove your benevolence but drained of authority. Or perhaps your caution has kept you safe but invisible, longing for a chance to step into a more commanding role. Identifying that friction point is the portal to mastery. Soon, we'll move beyond the mechanics of self-assertion to probe the moral terrain beneath these tactics. We'll confront the ethical calculus that determines when and how to deploy strategic control without sacrificing integrity or empathy. Because power, like fire, can warm or consume. The next chapter explores how to forge an inner compass that guides your use of influence toward lasting respect and genuine connection. Are you ready to examine the moral underpinnings of strategic self-assertion? The true test of authority lies not only in your ability to command but in your choice to do so wisely, and that exploration begins now. Part 5. The Cost of Dominance, Ethics, Empathy, and Control. Power tastes sweet on the tongue, but its aftertaste can be bitter indeed. When you begin to command rooms and steer outcomes, you inevitably face the question: at what moral price are you willing to transcend mere popularity and grasp genuine influence? Every strategy we've explored so far, selective generosity, calculated risks, strategic self-assertion, carries an undercurrent of ethical tension. Use them wisely, and you lift others; misuse them, and you exploit trust. This is the crucible of leadership, balancing the ambition to shape events with the humility to preserve the humanity of those you lead. The cost of dominance, if you ignore this, is alienation, regret, and the corrosive erosion of character. Consider the dilemma of a modern tech CEO who promised to change the world, only to pivot relentlessly toward profit margins. Early on, she championed open dialogue, hosted employee hackathons, and donated large chunks of revenue to social causes. Her company culture buzzed with purpose. Then pressure mounted from investors. Layoffs followed, mergers loomed, and altruistic programs were quietly shelved. Morale cratered. Staff who once believed in the cause felt betrayed, productivity faltered, and rival startups scooped up the disillusioned talent. The CEO's reputation survived in headlines praising her revenue growth, but the cost in human goodwill was incalculable. This scenario encapsulates the real-world tension between power used for purpose and power used for profit, even if, on the surface, both yield authority. Looking back through history, Machiavelli himself witnessed leaders whose ethical blind spots became their undoing. He wrote of Florentine Condottieri who, after seizing control with ruthless efficiency, betrayed alliances and squandered public trust by bending morality until it snapped. Their fall was swift and public. Envy morphed into coalitions against them, resentment turned street-level revolt. The very soldiers who once feared them rose in rebellion. Such episodes taught Machiavelli that cruelty, when divorced from strategic principle and balanced empathy, sows the seeds of its own reversal. Pain inflicted without purpose breeds hatred, and hatred, in turn, is a force far more destructive than fear. This leads us to a core existential question: does true power demand emotional detachment? Many equate leadership with stoicism, imagining that empathy is a luxury reserved for the weak. Yet if you sever all emotional connection, you become a tyrant, respected, perhaps, but isolated and despised. Conversely, pouring your heart into every interaction can leave you vulnerable to manipulation and exhaustion. The challenge is to navigate the narrow ridge between cold calculation and warm compassion, charting a course that sustains strength without forsaking conscience. At the heart of this moral calculus lies the notion of emotional intelligence as a strategic resource. Machiavelli never extolled callousness for its own sake. Rather, he valued clarity about when and how to deploy compassion. Empathy becomes potent only when governed by principle. In practice, this means listening deeply to concerns, acknowledging fears, and offering support when it aligns with your broader objectives, while being ever mindful that kindness should not become a perpetual entitlement. By calibrating your generosity against the long-term health of the group, you forge loyalty anchored in respect rather than obligation. Imagine a global NGO director who faced budget cuts amid a humanitarian crisis. She could either slash aid to vulnerable communities or halt her own expensive travel and reduce executive perks. Opting for the latter, she returned first-class tickets, sold her corporate car, and redirected that money to frontline relief. Her team watched, inspired. Donors took note. Field workers regained hope. Her choice wasn't a gesture of self-flagellation but a deliberate reordering of priorities, serving the mission before preserving status. That act of empathy elevated her authority in a way that any trimmed expense account or boardroom charisma never could. Yet we must diagnose the risks of integrating empathy into power dynamics. Emotional fatigue can set in when you care too much, leading to burnout or decision paralysis. Worse, unchecked empathy can blind you to larger strategic needs. You may postpone necessary layoffs or delay restructuring to avoid hurting feelings, only to inflict greater harm down the line. This is the subtle trap of the benevolent autocrat, he or she who cannot bear to deliver discomfort, yet wields the power to enforce it, and in hesitating, allows rot to spread unchecked. The transformation arc at this stage is discovering that true leadership emerges from harnessing emotional intelligence as a tool of long-range influence. Instead of reacting to every crisis with raw compassion or shrugging with detached indifference, you learn to serve both principle and heart in concert. You become the leader who can look a team member in the eye, acknowledge them, and then make the difficult call that preserves the vitality of the whole. This balanced approach changes you from a feared autocrat to a respected visionary. Central to Machiavelli's ethics is the idea that the best leaders are those who inspire genuine admiration while retaining the capacity to enforce tough decisions. He observed princes who paraded their benevolence lavishly, only to have it eaten away by credulous subjects exploiting their generosity. Conversely, he admired those who offered clemency strategically, rewarding loyalty only when it fortified the fabric of their realm. Time and again, he saw that an act of well-timed kindness yielded deeper devotion than constant indulgence. This brings us to a modern parallel, a nonprofit founder who structured impact sabbaticals for staff, 3 months every 2 years to pursue personal development or community projects. Initially, the board balked at the lost productivity. Yet those who returned from sabbaticals re-entered their roles with renewed creativity and engagement, innovating programs that expanded the organization's reach. The sabbatical policy wasn't a gimmick, it was a strategic investment in human capital. By granting employees breathing room, the founder amplified loyalty and effectiveness, demonstrating that empathy and control need not be antagonistic. Of course, integrating moral purpose and strategic influence invites an existential dilemma. How much are you willing to sacrifice for the sake of sustainable power? Will you forego short-term gains that conflict with your principles, even if others exploit your restraint? Can you accept temporary criticism when you refuse to pander to every faction? These are not hypothetical quandaries but daily crossroads where your vision of ethical leadership is tested against the seduction of expedience. As you wrestle with these questions, remember the metaphor of power as fire. In the right measure, fire warms, cooks food, and transforms ore into steel. Unchecked, it consumes forests, raises homes, and devours its own source. Your capacity for influence is that flame, powerful and necessary, yet demanding respect and vigilance. You choose how much air to admit, how wide or narrow to open the gate, and when to let the embers die down. Mastering this elemental force means honoring both its creative potential and its destructive risks. Let's consider a concrete example in an organizational context. A department head discovered that her team secretly resented her overly casual style, no deadlines enforced, too many open-ended meetings, nothing felt urgent. Morale dipped and turnover spiked. She could have resorted to harsh directives, rigid policies, and fear-driven metrics. Instead, she convened a candid summit, acknowledged the laxity, and invited her team to co-create a revised workflow. She set clear benchmarks and accountability, but also offered coaching and peer recognition when goals were met. Productivity soared without any hint of coercion. The blend of transparency, empathy, and firm standards became the blueprint for her leadership. Within that narrative lies the core insight. Emotional intelligence amplifies strategic control when empathy is not surrendered but rather wielded with intentionality. You neither abandon warmth nor permit softness to erode your capacity to set direction. Instead, you treat empathy as selective fuel, used sparingly but at critical junctures, enough to build trust and rally your circle, but always packaged within a framework of clear expectations. By now you may feel the weight of responsibility that accompanies power. Guilt can whisper that you're indulging in manipulation. Pride can murmur that your tactics are superior. The tension between these voices is your compass. When you veer toward guilt-induced paralysis, remind yourself that avoiding every tough decision can be as harmful as executing them without conscience. When you drift into hubristic assertion, revisit your core values and the people you've pledged to serve. Ethical leadership thrives in this dynamic equilibrium. Here's the challenge for you. What would you sacrifice for sustainable influence? Is it the allure of universal approval? Is it the comfort of avoiding conflict? Is it the temporary boost of headlines? Chart the territories you're unwilling to cede, principles you refuse to compromise, lines you won't permit yourself to cross. A ledger of sacrifices is more than a list of renunciations. It's a map of your moral terrain, guiding every strategic move. As we prepare to move into the final phase of this transformation, remember that tactics without ethics become empty rituals. Influence divorced from empathy collapses into tyranny. Empathy without boundary dissolves into chaos. The true art of power lies in weaving these threads into a tapestry of principled leadership, one that commands respect, nurtures loyalty, and stands the test of time. You've seen the cost of dominance when moral calibration fails, and you've glimpsed the promise of balanced authority. Now, the question becomes how to embody this balanced strength in your daily life. In the next section, we'll dive into practical steps, daily rituals, mindset shifts, and conversational tactics that will help you cement this equilibrium. You'll learn how to reinforce your moral compass with habits that keep both your heart and your strategy aligned. We'll explore simple exercises that transform these lofty insights into tangible behaviors, so you don't just understand ethical power, you live it. The journey to principled mastery is within reach, but the next moves are crucial. Are you ready to forge your inner authority and command respect without sacrificing integrity? The blueprint awaits. Part 6. Embodying Strength. Practical steps to inner authority. The journey you've walked, from breaking the chains of endless approval to wielding strategic self-assertion with ethical purpose, has prepared you for this moment, the moment when principles become practice and theory transforms into habit. These final steps are not dramatic proclamations or overnight miracles. They are simple, repeatable actions and small mindset shifts that gradually rewire your relationship to yourself and to others. They anchor the lessons you've absorbed so far, ensuring that inner authority is not a fleeting state but a stable foundation. It's time to move from understanding power to living it, day after day, in ways so authentic that no external applause, or its absence, can shake you. Think of Emma, a project manager who once dreaded every client call, convinced she had to be agreeable at all costs. In her before, she arrived early to virtual meetings, pasted on an eager smile, and juggled every last demand, only to end each day depleted and hollow. Feedback always circled back to her friendliness, never to her competence, and she felt trapped in a role that celebrated her warmth while ignoring her vision. But then she began to practice the rituals we'll explore now, starting her morning with a 2-minute boundary-setting mantra, marking off focus blocks on her calendar before responding to any messages, and consciously framing her proposals with clear I statements. 6 weeks later, in her after, she opened a meeting with calm confidence, listened without anxiety, and delivered her recommendations with unwavering clarity. Colleagues stopped calling her merely nice Emma and began deferring to her expertise. The shift wasn't magic, it was the cumulative effect of small, intentional choices that proclaimed, my time, my voice, and my priorities matter. You don't need months to feel a spark of that transformation. You can start with 3 quick exercises today, each designed to carve a groove of inner authority in your neural pathways. First, the pause, plan, breathe ritual. Whenever you feel the habitual tug to answer a request before processing it, pause for just 3 seconds. In that silent gap, envision where you want your time and energy to flow. Then take 1 deep breath and respond in alignment with that vision. This simple triangle, pause, plan, breathe, breaks the automatic yes reflex and replaces it with a choice grounded in self-respect. Second, the threshold test. Choose 1 low-stakes scenario, a friend asking for help moving something small, or a colleague requesting feedback outside work hours. Before replying, silently whisper to yourself, is this within my threshold of well-being? If it is, proceed. If not, offer an alternative that honors your boundary. Over time, you'll sharpen your sense of personal thresholds and learn that saying no in one area frees you to say yes more fully in the areas that truly matter to you. Third, the mirror question. Each evening, stand before a mirror and ask, with direct eye contact, did I act today from a place of authority or obligation? Notice your posture, your tone, the expressions that flitted across your face. Acknowledge any moments you slipped back into old patterns without judgment, simply name them. Then affirm out loud, tomorrow, I choose authority. This nightly ritual accelerates self-awareness and ingrains the commitment to step into your sovereign self at dawn. Beyond these exercises lie daily rituals that will solidify your emerging identity. Begin each morning with a glance at your calendar, circling the top 3 priorities that align with your long-term goals. Let these priorities be the anchors of your day, displacing the tyranny of every new notification. When messages arrive, refer back to those anchors before deciding whether to engage. If a request doesn't support your core objectives, politely defer it, perhaps by scheduling it later or delegating it altogether. By structuring your day around your own ambitions rather than others' urgencies, you reinforce the central tenet, your agenda is valid. Pair this with a midday mindfulness reset. Around lunchtime or mid-afternoon, pause your tasks for a minute of solitude, no screens, no noise. Close your eyes and scan your body for tension. Breathe into the tight spots and affirm softly, I own my space, my choices, my time. This ritual reminds you that you remain the captain of your ship, even amid the storms of external demands. Mindset shifts are equally vital. Reframe self-assertion from being difficult to showing respect, for your own needs and for others. When you say no to an unaligned request, you demonstrate that you expect the same level of care for your commitments that you extend to others. Replace thoughts like they'll be upset if I don't comply with they deserve my full attention when I have the capacity. Over time, this reframe dissolves guilt and embeds a new internal narrative. Boundaries are acts of respect, not selfishness. Your daily language plays a powerful role, too. Craft 3 power phrases that resonate with your style. For example, I appreciate you thinking of me, my schedule is full, but here's when I can help, or I hear your concern, let's explore a solution after I complete this priority, or I value your input. May I share my perspective now? These phrases are short, polite, and assertive. They signal that you welcome collaboration on your terms, not on autopilot. Practice them until they flow naturally in speech and text. Conversations become your proving ground. Next time someone cuts you off, pause, make eye contact, and say, I'd like to finish my thought. When a peer glosses over your idea, lean in and ask, could you elaborate on that point? I'd like to understand it fully before responding. By inserting concise requests for listening and clarity, you reclaim conversational space without aggression. Such tactics feel uncomfortable at first, like wearing a tailored suit after years of sweats, but that discomfort is a sign of growth, not a flaw to avoid. Complement these tactics with a simple evening journaling practice. Instead of recapping every event, write a brief note on one situation where you enacted your authority and one situation where you deferred to obligation. Reflect on the emotions that arose, the outcomes achieved, and the lessons learned. Even a single sentence per item deepens your self-awareness and accelerates the internalization of new habits. Now, imagine a typical week unfolding under this regimen. You wake with intention, guided by your circled priorities. You field requests with deliberation, using the pause, plan, breathe ritual to vet each invitation. You greet mid-afternoon fatigue with a mindfulness reset that recharges both your energy and your conviction. You communicate with power phrases that slow the pace and set clear boundaries. You finish each day by standing before the mirror and assessing your choices. By Friday, you are no longer the person who bends to every breeze. You are the person whose posture and words shape the environment around you. This is not an abstract ideal but a tangible reality you can craft, one deliberate step at a time. Of course, cultivating inner authority demands embracing discomfort. It asks, are you ready to own the unease of asserting yourself, to accept that some will resist your new boundaries, to face envy or misunderstanding from those accustomed to your old compliance? It's a test of courage, because the old reassurance of universal approval may flicker and fade as you tighten your circle of authentic engagement. But that contraction is precisely the point. You are lifting the weight of empty yes to create space for deeper, more meaningful yes. How far will you go to break free from external approval? The answer lives in the clarity of your next choice. Will you offer your energy only to causes that feed your purpose? Will you allocate your time by design rather than default? Will you speak your truth with kindness but without apology? Each choice cements your new identity, forging a self-respect so resilient that outside voices become mere background noise. Imagine a final personal breakthrough moment. You find yourself in a tense discussion where, under the old script, you would have conceded immediately. Instead, you sense the familiar tightness in your chest, take one breath, and calmly state your needs. For a brief heartbeat, the room seems to pause. Then, heads nod. People shift posture. The conversation opens into a genuine exchange of ideas, rather than devolving into a pressured plea. In that instant, you recognize your own power, not because you raised your voice, but because you stayed true to yourself. That moment becomes a keystone memory you carry forward, proof that inner authority is no longer theoretical but alive in your bones. At this juncture, you might ask yourself, which one of these practical steps will you commit to right now? Will you begin tomorrow's morning ritual by circling your top 3 priorities? Will you deploy the pause, plan, breathe in your next meeting? Will you journal each evening with the mirror question? Any of these commitments will set a ripple of change into motion. The key is to choose one, start small, and build consistency. Great transformations emerge from modest daily acts. Before we conclude, consider the final gauntlet, ensuring that these habits survive the inevitable tests, deadlines that demand your immediate compliance, relationships that expect your perpetual availability, emergencies that threaten to revert you to old scripts. The ultimate challenge isn't learning new skills, it's sustaining them when the stakes feel highest. It's when you're stretched thin or emotionally raw that your training will be most vulnerable. Yet it's precisely then that inner authority proves its worth. If, in that crucible, you can pause, plan, and breathe, uphold your boundaries, and speak with aligned clarity, you'll have cemented a transformation that no external pressure can reverse. So here's your next move. Identify the scariest scenario you anticipate this week, the one you're most tempted to respond to immediately, the one where you dread disappointing others the most. Then resolve now how you'll apply one of these rituals to that scenario. Visualize yourself executing the pause, plan, breathe, or the threshold test in that moment. Feel the tension, and feel yourself standing firm despite it. That mental rehearsal primes your neural pathways, making the real event feel less daunting and more manageable. This is the final stretch of your metamorphosis. You've dismantled conditioned compliance, embraced the strategic wisdom of self-assertion, calibrated ethics with influence, and now you're embodying strength through daily practice. The new you is emerging, someone who commands respect by valuing their own time, someone who wields empathy as a precise instrument rather than a floodgate, someone who stands in their power without ever losing their humanity. Yet the journey doesn't end here. Ahead lies the ultimate test, the day when everything conspires to pull you back into the people-pleasing vortex, urgent emails, emotional appeals, last-minute demands. Will you fall back into old grooves, or will you stand tall, deploying every ritual and tactic you've learned? That moment is your true initiation into inner authority. When you pass that test, you'll no longer be at the mercy of others' expectations. You'll be the architect of your own destiny. Prepare for that challenge. Stay vigilant. Keep practicing. And remember, every time you honor your own agenda over reflexive compliance, you reinforce the foundations of unshakable self-respect. Your sovereignty, once blurred by the haze of people-pleasing, now shines clear. And nothing in the world can dim it. So take a breath. Choose your step. The final chapter awaits, where we explore how to guard this hard-won authority against complacency and ensure it endures for a lifetime. Are you ready to face that final crucible and emerge wholly sovereign? You stand now at the summit of a mountain whose slopes you have scaled step by deliberate step, shedding the heavy pack of other people's expectations and forging an ascent toward the clear air of self-command. Behind you lies the valley of automatic yes, the relentless echo chamber of approval that once bound your mind and heart. Ahead of you stretches the expansive plateau of principled authority, where each choice is a declaration of your sovereignty, and every action is guided by the compass of your own values. Here, in this rarefied space, applause is neither sought nor feared, because you have come to recognize that true influence radiates from the integrity with which you hold your ground and the clarity with which you define your terms. In this new realm, success is measured less by the volume of compliments you collect and more by the steadfastness of your convictions when the current of popular opinion surges against you. You have learned that the applause of the crowd can be as fickle as wind through autumn leaves, shifting direction at the slightest gust of change, leaving you exposed and vulnerable should you have anchored your worth to their praise. Instead, you have anchored yourself to principles that shape how you spend your time, how you invest your energy, and how you wield your influence. Every no you have spoken in service of those principles has cleared away clutter, opened up breathing room, and allowed the true contours of your purpose to emerge in sharper relief. But this is neither the end nor a place to rest complacently, basking in your own cleverness or the glow of newfound discipline. It is the threshold of an ongoing journey, a continuous practice that demands vigilance, humility, and the willingness to confront fresh challenges with the same strategic clarity that guided you to this peak. New demands will arrive, urgent emails that threaten to pull you back into reactive frenzy, late-night calls that test the limits of your boundaries, requests that tug at your empathy even as they strain your capacity. Each of these moments will present the temptation to revert to the old patterns, the quick absolutely, the nervous acquiescence, the desperate bid for approval. And in those crucibles, you will discover whether your commitment to inner authority stands firm or crumbles under pressure. Imagine, for instance, the day when every department in your organization needs your sign-off by noon, or the deal you've been cultivating for months hangs in the balance. Under the old script, you might have juggled indiscriminately, sacrificing one priority after another to prove your indispensability. Under your new mandate, you pause, breathe, and consult the anchor points you selected for your week. You weigh each request against your strategic objectives and your ethical guidelines. You consider not only the immediate gain but the long-term health of your relationships and the sustainability of your influence. And then you choose, not for the hollow pixels of approval, but for the enduring architecture of impact. This is the essence of principled leadership, the harmonious fusion of strategic acumen with unwavering integrity. You no longer mistake kindness for weakness or compassion for endless availability. You understand that generosity, like any resource, must be governed by clear boundaries, lest it be drained away by limitless demands. You recognize that decisiveness, once feared as cold or ruthless, becomes a vessel for empathy when applied with foresight and anchored by moral purpose. The calibrated discharge of your energy, your attention, and your goodwill becomes an art form. Each act of restraint sharpens the value of your engagement. Each well-timed concession deepens the loyalty you inspire. And yet, the noblest structure of authority requires a vigilant custodian. You must guard against the twin perils of hubris and complacency. Hubris creeps in when you begin to believe that your tactics are infallible, that your inner fortress is impregnable. It whispers that discomfort is unnecessary, that bending too often, even for the right reasons, is a sign of weakness, not wisdom. Complacency settles in when your new rituals feel comfortable and familiar, when the novelty of self-assertion dulls into routine. You might find yourself declaring, "I've arrived," only to discover that your edges have softened and the siren call of automatic approval has found tiny cracks in your resolve. To preempt these threats, schedule regular inspections of your authority, honest conversations with trusted allies, reflective journaling on your decisions, and renewed commitments to the rituals that first forged your transformation. Remember the pause, plan, breathe triangle, the threshold test, and the mirror question, those simple yet profound practices that delivered you from unconscious acquiescence to intentional leadership. They remain your faithful sentinels. When you feel the magnetic pull of reflexive compliance, pause and plan once more. When the currents of obligation threaten to sweep you away, test your threshold. When you sense your center wobbling, return to the mirror and ask, "Am I serving my highest purpose or merely assuaging someone else's discomfort?" In each reflection, you reinforce your new identity. In each disciplined pause, you renew your covenant with self-respect. As you stand on this plateau of self-command, you might gaze back at the panorama of your life and notice how the contours have changed. Relationships that once felt transactional, measured by the ledger of favors owed, now thrive on mutual respect, founded on honest exchanges and clear boundaries. Projects that used to overwhelm you with spiraling priorities now unfold according to your design, guided by your capacity for strategic generosity and your ability to take calculated risks. Your voice has grown quieter yet more potent. You speak less often, but when you do, your words carry weight. You realize that power is not the loudest roar but the most measured gesture, the most deliberate pause, the most principled stance. And still, the world continues to demand answers, to test your resolve, to challenge your hard-won authority. There will be times when colleagues dismiss your boundaries as rigidity, when friends mistake your new priorities for indifference, when loved ones feel puzzled by your refusal to be endlessly available. These are the crucibles that burn away the dross of approval-seeking and temper the steel of your character. Stand firm, yet remain open to dialogue. Explain that your boundaries are declarations of self-respect, not rejections of others. Offer a window into your process. I can invest in this fully when I respect my own limits. In doing so, you transform potential conflicts into opportunities for growth, both for yourself and for those who engage with you. Let this concluding reflection be not a full stop but a question mark. What bold choice will you make tomorrow? Which old script will you rewrite with the ink of self-command? Perhaps you will decline an invitation that siphons your energy, freeing hours to pursue a passion that fuels your creativity. Perhaps you will invite a team member to a conversation about how to collaborate more effectively, setting the tone for reciprocal respect. Maybe you will sit alone with your calendar, circle your top priorities, and marvel at how each circled item gleams like a beacon guiding your day. Whatever the action, let it be a testament to the fact that you no longer serve the fleeting whims of external validation but the enduring imperatives of your deepest purpose. Will you cling to the comfortable habit of seeking approval, even though it has cost you authenticity and peace? Or will you choose, with deliberate courage, to stand tall in the demanding light of principled authority? The path of least resistance may still beckon. It is lined with the well-worn footprints of yes and the gentle hum of momentary relief. But you know now where that path ends, and the hollow echo of praise that dissipates the moment you cease to perform. Instead, step onto the less crowded road, the one that winds through rocky terrain and uncharted vistas, where each foothold is earned, each view is hard-won, and each breath carries the clarity of self-possession. As the sun dips below the horizon of your old self, take a moment to honor the journey that brought you here, from the first flickers of discomfort at saying no to the confident embodiment of inner authority. Acknowledge the fears you faced, the boundaries you erected, the strategies you mastered, and the ethics you calibrated. This is your new mandate, to choose power over praise, discipline over delight, purpose over pleasantry. And as you continue to walk this path, remember that genuine influence is not a fortress you build for others to storm, but a garden you cultivate within, rich with the seeds of intention, tended by the waters of self-respect, and blooming with the flowers of authentic connection. So let your first bold step be taken in the stillness of tomorrow's dawn. Let your heart pound not with the dread of obligation, but with the anticipation of sovereignty. Let your mind settle not on what others expect of you, but on what you intend to create in the world. And let your spirit, finally unburdened, stretch its wings in the winds of possibility that only those willing to relinquish the safety of approval can ever truly feel. This is your moment of choice. Choose power over praise. Choose self-mastery over social affirmation. Choose the luminous pathway of principled authority, and claim the life that, until now, only flickered in the shadows of other people's applause.